So, you want to work in a zoo? Well, you're in the right place. We're going to be talking to zookeepers, researchers, conservationists and many more people about their careers. We will discuss how they got into doing what they do now, and of course we'll be asking them for their advice to those that aspire to work with animals or for animals and the natural world.
Right, thanks Ollie. For this episode we're pleased to welcome two of our gardeners. I'm probably going to be told off for calling Catherine and Jay gardeners. They're from our botanics team. As well as being a zoo, Paignton Zoo is also a registered botanical garden with an amazing collection of plants from all over the world. In these podcasts we've been talking about careers here at Wild Planet Trust, and we can't ignore the people who keep the zoo looking amazing and ensure that when we talk about rainforests we have one to show. Now, later in the podcast, we'll be asking for the absolute worst part of their job, but that's later on. Now is our chance to find out what they really do each day and how they got the job. So welcome Catherine and Jay, and over to Ollie.
So, at the start of all of our podcasts, we go through three kind of classic questions, the first of which is, what are your names?
So my name's Catherine, and I'm the Deputy Curator of Botanics.
Excellent stuff. That goes on to the second question, what's your job title? So Jay, your turn.
Yeah, I'm Jay. I'm a gardener. My position is actually senior estate operative, but generally that equates to being a gardener.
Are we allowed to call you gardeners? Is that right?
Yeah, there's no offence being
right.
Good. And then I suppose what we do in every other podcast as well is, what is the weirdest job you've ever had?
As a gardener or previous?
Just in general.
Anyway.
Just in general, what is the weirdest job you've ever had?
I've sort of been attracted to weird jobs through most of my career, really. So there's many. None really spring to mind, but a previous career working with animals as well as the plants has brought up lots of different things. Nothing really springs to mind.
Well, you were a keeper, right? Before you were.
I was, yeah.
So I suppose zookeeper would be one. So
that's quite weird, but there's so many different elements to that. You know, the variety in that profession is similar to the variety in the profession I do now. I can touch on that more later or now if you prefer.
Well, I did my personal ones so far. I've shoveled mushroom compost and I've chopped firewood. Catherine?
So I've got two.
Right.
Two.
Yeah.
So as a gardener working in a zoo, at the end of the day helping lift the tortoises back into their house.
Okay, right.
These are the giant big tortoises.
Yeah. Okay, so tortoise manhandler.
So manual handling with tortoises. And then the second one was pollinating the Titanarum.
Right, okay.
Because, it was a cross between surgery and, painting.
Okay, so surgery crossed with painting.
So
Interesting.
Now, is it true with that you post pollen around the country?
we did post pollen around the country. We were posted pollen so we could pollinate our Titan,
right, okay.
but then we also collected pollen and sent it off to the Royal Botanic Gardens, Edinburgh, so it could be stored in their pollen store.
Right, so for people who are listening who don't know, Titanarum is a massive flower, right? Like a couple of metres in height, so enormous flower. And we have a number of them here. One's called Audrey, is that right?
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay, so Audrey is one of the flowers. And so to get the pollen out of it, how do you do that?
You have to wait until it comes into flower,
okay.
And it starts to bloom in the early evening, and then it's fully open by about 8:30 in the evening.
Right, okay, so you have to stay here at night?
So you have to stay on in the zoo after hours, which is quite strange in itself because it's quite spooky. The baboons are sort of making their noises, but everywhere else is quite quiet. And then we had to cut a small hole in the side of the Titanarum to access where the pollen was. Okay. And then get with a brush just collect into a test tube the pollen.
And then you send that off to another botanical garden. And
then at the same time you're also painting, if you've been sent pollen from another collection, then you're painting it onto the female flowers.
Right, okay. So have you successfully propagated those here?
Yes, so we had hundreds of seeds. We were very, very successful, and we actually sent those seeds all around Europe to other collections, both zoos and botanic gardens and National Trust gardens. Okay. So there's lots of Titan babies that came from us.
Right, so growing into massive plants. So come on, Jay, can you match it? What surgery on a plant?
Well, involved in things like that, but also, the propagation of plants in general, I think is fascinating. So, and I can liken it to, trying to breed endangered animals.
Yeah.
So that's the goals of both professions, really. Is you want to increase your stock, and the rarer it is, the more, the keenness there are, to get it right and be professional, and as Catherine says, to share the experience, the knowledge, but also, the youngsters, whether it be plants or animals.
Well, to explain for people who are listening, I suppose they need to know that at Wild Plant Trust we're trying to work to help halt species decline, and when people think of a zoo, they're going to be thinking of saving animal species, but you're working to save plants as well, right? You're going to be working with some endangered plants, and I think it would be quite good to just touch on that. So can you tell me about Audrey? Is it one plant?
Audrey is an individual,
right.
But we have about 6 plants that are all of flowering age. They take about 10 years to mature to such a size that they can produce a flower.
Right, so you've got a 10-year-old plant in a massive pot with a name.
Mm-hmm.
What are the other ones called?
We've got Olympian, who first flowered in 2012 when the London Olympics was going on. Okay. So we had to call her Olympian because she
just
size.
fits, doesn't it?
And then we've got Titch and Mr. Tiny, who both, when they first flowered, were very small in comparison to the others that we've grown.
Okay.
Who
chooses the names?
Lorna, our glass house.
Right, okay.
Okay. It makes it easier to identify who's who as well. It's like the animals, the keepers give them their names, and we do the same with certain individual plants where we have a great many.
Yeah. Okay, I just wondered if you go down the pub and then get mistaken for being talking about a person when in fact you're talking about a plant. Okay, now then, getting on to it, we're supposed to be talking about careers and advice, and it's good to hear about an interesting aspect of your job. But can you, maybe Jay, can you remember when you decided you wanted to be a gardener? Like, was there one experience, like a moment?
I think it stems back from just wanting to work with nature. So, my transition from working with animals to plants wasn't a massive one. It was more about gaining the knowledge on different species from what I gained in my previous career. So still working outside, there's still elements of sort of nurture and care, and you're working with wildlife. So
is it just like how long ago did you change?
Well, I started working with animals in the mid '80s, and so that was a 26-year career.
Right. Okay.
I'd been gardening privately at home and at work to a degree, because working with some of the big browsing animals, I was involved in collecting the fodder, which we call browse, which I also do now in my newer career, which is now 12 years in.
Okay.
So some of the jobs I was doing as a keeper, I'm still doing now, but it was more a question of trying to clear all the knowledge in my head to a degree, just to make room for all the plant names, because working in a botanic garden, there's obviously thousands of plants, and they've all got more than one name, common name as well as a scientific name. Quite often the names change by botanists, so as soon as you've learned one, you quite often have to relearn a different one for the same plant.
So 26 years as a keeper, 12 years as a gardener.
Yes.
Okay, that's quite a long. I'm thinking that some of our listeners are going to be like teenagers who are thinking about, maybe first careers. So that's quite a good.
I could only advise them as, follow your passions is what I did.
Yeah.
I was brought up in a household where my father worked in quite a well-paid job in London and commuted every day, and he didn't particularly enjoy his job.
Okay.
So I think that installed in me as a young age. I didn't want to go down that line, and I'd rather pick a career that was something I was passionate about. So, my career officers in the mid-80s were faced with me saying footballer, boxer, musician, or work with animals. Okay. So, and wildlife. So, out of those 4 long shots, one of them I've made work. So I'm quite proud of that.
I suppose that begs the question, what is your favourite animals or plants?
I tend to not have favourites. I did when I was an animal keeper, I'd get asked this on a daily basis, and I think it's unfair to have favourites. Okay. I mean, sometimes you do, you might have some that you prefer less than others, but I think, if you're professional, then you try and care about everything that you work with. So I always that was my answer to the members of the public when they posed me that question.
So Catherine, what's your favourite plant then?
I change my favourite plant as often as I change my socks.
Right, okay, fair enough. So Catherine, yourself, how did you decide, when did you decide you want to be a gardener?
Well, completely different to Jay. I left school at 16, wasn't quite sure what I wanted to do. Mum and Dad weren't prepared to let me have a gap year or a year out to work out what I wanted to be. So I managed to get a place at Paignton College to study horticulture at an entry level. And it was about halfway through that first course that I suddenly went, actually, this is a really great career.
Okay, so just a random
I was reluctant.
Choice, yeah.
I'd always loved being out in the garden as a kid. I was lucky. I grew up in a house that had a huge garden.
Okay.
So grew veggies as a kid.
Right, so Paignton College is not far from where we are in Paignton in Devon. And so how long did you study there for?
Initially, it was for 4 years.
Yeah.
And then I worked for a while, and then after getting the job here as head gardener initially, I did a foundation degree. I was never the most academic of people. I'm very dyslexic, so...
Yeah. So you studied a bit, then worked a bit, then studied more while you were working. Okay, I think that's more common now, right? In some ways.
And formal education can be quite a challenge for me, sort of sitting in a lecture room, taking notes, reading all the Latin names, massive learning curve for me. So, but if you put the work in, I always wanted a job that I wanted to be outside. With my job now, I'm much more office based, but I still get to work in a beautiful environment, making the environment better by planting trees and making it look amazing.
I'm trying to imagine, like, when I can imagine it being dyslexic is challenging enough when it's academic work, but then to add in really long scientific names on plants, just an extra level of challenge there. So, Jay, did you go and study horticulture or plants, or?
I've done that since joining the garden department.
Okay.
So the transition was quite a quick one.
Okay.
So basically, when I got into the zoo in the first place, I went on what they used to call a youth training scheme, which some of our older listeners like the teachers might remember, but some of the students won't know. It's very similar to the Kickstart scheme that's going now, so a government-based scheme. So that was enabling me to get my foot in the door as a zookeeper. So I worked 10 months on a youth training scheme and applied for every permanent position that came up, and was lucky enough to
right, because we've got Kickstarters here at the zoo. We've got a number in different departments, and it seems to be quite a good way of coming in and getting some experience. Right?
I think so, yeah.
So, like for both of you, well, actually, I was going to say for both of you got experience first, but you were saying that you studied first before you almost decided to be.
Yeah, I did some voluntary work for the National Trust. I lived fairly close to a National Trust garden. Yeah. And I used to sort of help out people in the community doing their gardens to start off with. So, yeah. Okay.
So, right, if I was asking you, like formally, what qualifications? So you've got a foundation degree in?
Horticulture. Okay. And, garden management, so...
And Jay, you did like level 3.
I'm up to level 3 in horticulture at the moment.
Horticulture as well. So that's I know staff, but because that's the terms that people will be looking out for, isn't it? It's like basically, is it horticulture? It's more that than botany?
Yeah.
I know that's staff, but I'm a zoologist, marine zoologist, but that's very different from being able to do anything practically. So you're horticulture rather than botany.
Yeah, I've done courses in botany, but they've been to top up my knowledge from the horticultural qualifications I've done.
So would you do a different qualification if you were starting now?
I don't think I'd change anything at the moment. I'd probably have paid a bit more attention at school with the sciences. And obviously, back in my day, there was options to do Latin, which
would have helped.
Seemed a useless proposition at the time. But now I quite gladly buy a book, as I have done recently, on Latin for gardeners. It's a really interesting language and can be confusing, because it would also be self-explanatory to some of the names we try and get our tongues around.
Yeah, it's quite funny though, because when you're at school and if you saw Latin as an option, you would not think, I want to be a gardener, I need to study that.
I thought at the time, what use will that be in my lifetime? So I dismissed it straight away. But hindsight's a wonderful thing, isn't it?
When we were talking to the keepers, they were chatting about the fact that they actually do have to use maths in their work, that people had said to them, you'll need to, you need to concentrate in maths, you'll need it in your job, and then they said, I do actually use it, and they were using Microsoft Excel and things like that, so surprising amount of technology in their work. So, so if only you learnt Latin. Are you thinking about studying more?
Personally, I think you're always learning. So whether it's official learning where you're actually taking a college course or whatever, or just day-to-day working. I mean, the amount of plants we work in and the animals we work around as well, and the symbiotic relationship between the two means you're always learning. What animals eat, what they might destroy. A lot of our planting is also ornamental planting, so what looks nice, how big things grow. So plant names as well. So you're learning all the time what insects use the plants. So we see the bigger picture, I always say, as gardeners. So you're not just looking at the plants, you're looking at the soil, the environment. How big something's going to be in 50, 100 years' time is always worth considering when you're planting a tree.
Yeah, that's very true.
And just to digress slightly from that, I've always been amazed because we recently did the Queen's Grove planting. And I remember, Catherine, you showed me the plan and you had these like trees with how big they might grow and all the canopy on there in this nice drawn up little plan of them. And then I see the trees and they are just what look to me like baby trees, just a stick with some leaves. No offence to the gardens, obviously you can see that much further ahead. So
there's a best description of it.
Yeah,
a stick with leaves. That's a nice, valuable. I really
not
think
the
you're
technical
honouring
term, I know.
But
But just to put that in perspective,
I
will put some footage on the video version of this that shows what I'm on about. Because
Sticks
obviously
with
I
leaves.
look at them and I just see, well, it's a baby tree. It's got no leaves. It's got no canopy. It's not what the plan was. So how do you go about planning for that? Is that like a special skill that you've developed over time, or is that something that you've just come to learn on the job, kind of how things will look?
I think it's very much it from experience, but also if you're choosing plants, putting in the research, and thank God for the internet these days, because Google, you can do a Google image search of what a tree will look like, put in the Latin name, what it will look like mature, and hey presto, you've got 50 images.
Who does that? Is that you? Is that part of your job as
the
deputy curator? Is you're going to be trying to plan the collection, right?
Yeah, so very much so. So we've gone through a phase of having to remove lots of trees from site because we've had various diseases, ash dieback being the most significant of that. And so I'm now looking at the landscape and thinking, goodness me, we need to ensure that the canopy is back in the future, and how are we going to ensure that? We've been fortunate over the 17 years I've worked here, we've planted a lot of trees, but we need to continue to do that because with the threat of diseases, that's unprecedented since Dutch elm disease that we're having to replace. And so having an understand of what that stick with green leaves on will grow up to be. So some of it's experience. So I think both Jay and I would agree we like to visit gardens and see plants when they're fully mature, but also putting in that research.
Okay.
If you don't know a plant.
Away from here, you would actually go into a garden and if you're out and about on holiday or something, you'd pop in somewhere and say, and what do you make a note of a tree you saw you like, or a plant or something?
Yeah. I've got a camera on my phone and it's full of pictures of trees and plants. I was up at Powderham last weekend and was amazed. They've got a stunning specimen of cork oak, and
so when Jay plants a tree and it grows too big and causes trouble, he can blame you because you didn't do your research right on.
Quite possibly. But the thing is that it will probably be in 100 years' time, and I don't know about Jay, but I probably won't be here.
Well, if you won't, I won't.
So you're a gardener. So what does that actually mean day to day? Like, what does a day look like for you and your team?
No 2 days are the same. Obviously, we work with all the weather conditions and all the seasons. And being such a big garden with lots of different plants from different habitats.
Like 80 acres, right? So
but we're not just outdoors. Of course, we've got indoor tropical houses. So we have got different kinds of plants from different habitats from all over the world. So I think the variety really appeals to most of the people on our team. Is that there isn't much monotony. So it's not like we're just weeding borders or mowing lawns. Of course, we do those general jobs that people will probably associate gardeners with. We do, of course, do those, but I think the whole wow factor of the positions we're in is we might be chainsawing one morning and then pricking out a little seedling in the afternoon and everything in between.
Okay.
And of course, working with plant conservation in situ in the UK or abroad is always something that we're keen to get involved in as well.
So you start quite early, right?
Yeah, 7:30 a.m.
Okay, so 7:30. I was going to say 8, but 7:30. So you start quite early, and then what? You just go off and you do different. Like, do you normally do one task all day, or are you chopping and changing?
Chopping and changing. Yeah.
Okay, depending on
working in the zoo, there's a certain rhythm to how we do things.
Okay.
So there's a lot of jobs that we can only achieve before the visitors come in.
Okay, yeah. So if you're mowing, you probably want to get that done before the visitors are in.
Because there's a risk involved with that. Stones can be flicked out, but also, like this morning, Jay was mowing in the lion paddock,
right?
And we wanted to get that done before the public was in, so we could facilitate the lion being let out later on in the day.
So the lion gets locked away while Jay's in.
So, and there's an awful lot of planning.
Just running around,
really
just
fast.
mows very quickly. Right, okay, sorry.
I don't use any of my team as lion bait, you'll be pleased to hear.
This podcast is brought to you by Wild Planet Trust, a conservation charity based in the southwest of the UK with zoos in Paignton and Newquay, local and national nature reserves, and field projects in the UK, Tanzania, Nigeria, Zimbabwe, Vietnam, and Sulawesi. You can find out more on our website www.wildplanettrust.org.uk.
But so certain jobs have to be done before the public are in, from a safety point of view, and then I suppose during the seasons you can have different jobs. Like as in during the spring, it must be crazy busy.
Yeah. So everything has suddenly started growing, or been building up for a few weeks, but now we're into the full growth spurt. So weeding is a massive task to keep on top of.
Painting the Forth Bridge at the moment this time of year is you can never really get around all the borders. You know, you do a couple of borders. Then a week or so later, the borders you've just done a couple of weeks ago are full of weeds again, you know. So we try and be organic as much as we possibly can with the weeding.
Yeah.
So yeah.
So what's your favourite job? What job? When you come in the morning, Catherine says you're going to be doing this today. What's your favourite?
I like formative pruning myself.
Right. Okay. As in shaping the
the aesthetics of trees and shrubs. You know. But I like to take all the jobs. I don't like to have just, one thing, as I said earlier. I like the fact that it's varied and our skill set is so diverse. We could be doing, any number of different jobs.
Yeah, okay. Strangely, one of my first jobs as a teenager was in a bonsai nursery. So in terms of formative pruning, I suppose you're quite jealous of that. And Catherine, what's yours?
I think planting, and particularly planting a tree, because when you plant that tree, you're setting something in course that will go far beyond your own years and will potentially bring joy to the public that come into the site, but also all the animals that will use that tree. It's something that goes far beyond just that initial act of digging a hole and teasing out the roots and care. It's something that's far bigger than me on my own.
But Jay, you do like browse collection, right? So when we're feeding animals like rhinos and giraffes that have got, in the wild, we'll be feeding on bark and leaves. But I know part of your job is going and collecting browse. At the moment, we've got this collaboration with the National Trust to collect browse from there.
That helps top up our supplies.
Okay.
So we're lucky that we've got such a big site. And a lot of it's not on show. So we've got some woodlands, we've got some off-show facilities, which I think just planning ahead is something we're really been proactive with in certainly the last sort of 10 or 12 years I've been on the department. So it might take 5 to 7 or 8 years or more for something that goes in quite small to be of a size where we can use it for browse and it be sustainable.
Okay.
So it's managing our browse stocks sensibly and rationing sensibly so that we've got a continuation of browse supply year after year.
In some ways, that works a bit more like a tree surgeon or like an arborist or something. You're using chainsaws and so you've done like chainsaw tickets.
Yes. Yeah.
And that. So like when people are listening and we talk about qualifications, it's easy to think about like the big qualifications like like long courses, but you had to do tickets in chainsaws, like front loaders or telehandlers, right? And
some of our team are on telehandlers. I'm not.
Tractor driving.
Tractor driving.
Okay, so those sort of land skills are quite important in your job. Like Catherine, do you do so much of that, or is that?
Originally I did.
Yeah.
These days I use that sort of qualification less.
Yeah.
But having progressed to a sort of manager level, still having an understanding of those what are called competency tickets.
Yeah.
Is important because there's a lot of the health and safety considerations and keeping the team safe.
Yeah, true. Okay, so if you're asking Joe to go and do a job, like knowing that he's got the right number of people with him or he's doing it in the right way.
Yeah.
Okay.
And increasingly, the things that I'm looking to study now are things sort of surrounding tree safety and the management of the tree collection.
Okay, so a tree falling on somebody or a limb.
So assessing the health of a tree is quite a big part of my job and sort of day to day. So.
Okay, so when you're chatting about competency tickets, Catherine, like you get to use some quite cool machinery compared to some jobs. So Jay, what do you get to use?
Any number of vehicles.
Okay.
So we've got 2 electric vehicles, sort
Okay.
of golf buggy kind of style things. We've got 2 tractors, a bigger one and a smaller one. But they wow our visitors quite a lot more than some of the animals, you know, to see the little tractors driving around. The kids are just wowed by those. We've got all the machinery you'd expect, so hedge trimmers, blowers, chainsaws. We've been trialling out electrical stuff of recent years, so you know, battery operated equipment.
Okay, so that's quite a shift because it like a noisy petrol chainsaw is quite.
Yeah, so taking environmental issues into account, but also animals that can easily be spooked. Some of the birds and some of the mammals would not benefit from having a petrol-based noisy bit of equipment around them. So battery-operated stuff ticks a lot of boxes. As long as it does the job properly, is obviously what Catherine and us guys on the team would look at. So we trial stuff, and if it's fit for purpose, then that's probably a better route to go down.
Yeah. Okay, so Catherine, what tasks are you happy to leave to your teammates?
All of them.
Cheeky.
So when you come in on a day and you think, right, okay, I don't want to do that. So I think one of the keepers said about clearing out drains.
Yeah.
Okay, for you?
I don't know. One job that I've never done, mainly because my legs are a bit short and not powerful enough, but emptying the dung trailers.
Oh, nice. Okay,
So yeah, I actually can't reach the pedals properly on our big old tractor.
Okay.
So I'm always quite relieved not to have to do that. I'm also not the greatest at reversing trailers.
Oh, okay, right.
So yeah, on a good day I can reverse a trailer. On a bad day, it just goes every which way. Oh my goodness, it's so frustrating.
Right. And Jay, what are you happy to leave to your teammates?
Probably mowing. Some of the guys over the years have loved mowing.
I'm
absolutely
horrified.
Adore mowing, but to me, I'd rather do something a bit more different.
Yeah,
a bit
but
more
happiness is
challenging
when you
than
get
that.
like the perfect stripes. I was kayaking the other day and a guy on his lawn in Torquay, I was looking up and on his lawn he had like perfect stripes, but he had them at diagonals so that when you looked at his lawn you could see 2 sets of stripes. But you do not like that?
Hope's Nose Way.
Yeah.
That doesn't do it for me, I'm afraid.
I did think he's got too much time, but anyway.
How do you get those stripes? Because it's always baffled me.
He's the wrong
Is it
man
just
to ask.
mowing in
I'm the wrong man
different-
to
I was
ask.
going to say, you don't like mowing, but Catherine...
You need a cylinder mower with a rear roller.
There you are.
There we go.
Okay, and then you just go different ways.
And then you literally go up and... But it is very tedious.
Yeah.
I used
Ollie,
to have
you
to
don't
mow
have a
cricket pitches.
I don't have a garden, and if there were any gardening thing that I like the most, it's strimming.
Okay, right.
I often go over to my parents and trim their garden every so often because it's just a bit of fun.
You're going to wish you hadn't told us that. aren't you?
Yeah,
We need
we're
extra
short of a
bodies.
strimmer for the tiger rabbit.
Short of a strimmer, and then you'll remind me that I called them twigs with leaves. Uh-oh.
Right, now, changing tack a little bit, which is just about skills that you need. So we've talked about sort of qualifications that you might think about if you're thinking about this as a career. So in fact, what would you study now? If you were if somebody came to you and said, I'm thinking about being a gardener, or I'm thinking about working in horticulture, what would you be thinking now is a good route?
I think it depends on the individual. I didn't go down the line, but the opportunity for apprenticeships.
Okay.
I actually did try and get on, it was the National Trust's equivalent to apprenticeship, which was called a careership.
Okay, so you think apprenticeships. Jay, would you?
Obviously, the sciences are always going to be beneficial, I think, for careers like this. I think it's more about adaptability and, a love of plants and wildlife.
Yeah.
I think those attributes would be more important than qualifications. Obviously, qualifications are important. There's no escaping that. But I think attitude and a caring nature, and as I say, being able to adapt to an array of different jobs.
Well, I guess as well, it's going to depend on the person, isn't it? Because if you're leaving school, then maybe going on to college to do a couple of years and getting some qualifications would be quite good. Whereas if you're like later life changing careers, then you might think maybe an apprenticeship or sort of learning on the job might be a better way of.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of apprenticeships, definitely, in whatever shape or form they come in. But yeah, I mean, there's obviously places like Paignton, as Catherine mentioned earlier, and agricultural colleges. You know, if somebody's keen that they definitely want to take a job like a gardener, then they would follow those routes. I think maybe, you know, the work experience route or apprenticeship route is good, just so you get a feel of the job. You might find that it's too tiring for you. You don't like the hours. You don't like working in all conditions of weather.
Well, that was going to be a question actually, which is what's the drawbacks? Like, I mean, being a gardener is fairly brutal.
It can be. Work, right? Are they a drawback though? You know, you take the rough with the smooth. So if every day was a sunny day, would you appreciate it?
Yeah.
You know.
Certainly some of the best days are when you go home and you're really properly tired, where you've done a physically demanding day and you sleep.
Yeah.
Because you've put your all into that day.
Yeah.
And normally you can see the results of, I don't know, shifting however many trailer loads of mulch or whatever.
Okay.
But you can see what you've achieved, and it's a really nice sort of sense of.
Okay, so the physical satisfaction of having done like a decent day's work,
and just being outside in the fresh air, and seeing everything.
On a rainy, cold day, I'm going to remind you of that and say that you said that you like to physically.
Yeah.
Well, that's what warms you up, you see.
Yeah, warming work. Yeah.
As long as my partner's got tea ready for me when I get home.
Right. Okay. Fair enough.
Fair play.
Sorry, I was going to say, I often say to people when talking about a career like this is, you know, you don't need to go to the gym in a job like this, because you can use your job to, you know, to exercise in any way you want to, but have results at the end of it as well. So it's a much more productive way of being physically fit. Doesn't mean you've got to sort of go hell for leather and break yourself, but you know, there's opportunities for you. You know, if you're that way inclined and you want a rippling body, you can do it and work at the same time.
I think some people as well just like the idea of not sitting at a desk all day and not being out in the weather. I know it's not always fine weather, but being out in the weather and actually not being at a desk and just being surrounded
you
by.
You can see the rewards for your work instantly.
Yeah.
You know, whether it be mowing or pruning or planting, you know, all of those things, you know, or even clearing. Some of the more ugly jobs that we undertake are, you know, dealing with brambles and spiky plants and sort of the less attractive side of our site. But you know, you can see instant results by turning an area around. You know, it might have not been on our radar for a while and it's become a little bit unkept. But you know, we stick a couple of people on it. Keen to turn it around, and you can see instant results of it, not just being cleared, but replanted sometimes in the same day. Yeah. So, you know, I get a big kick personally out of stuff like that. Is, you know, that instant, you know, results of, you can see what you've put the effort into within a day or two.
I think that would be one of my worst jobs, spiky things, just go through gloves, I can't be dealing with them.
Well, yeah, I play guitar, so that is one of the downsides of, you know, we wear gloves, of course, but sometimes the gloves aren't, you know, it's not just brambles, you know, there's obviously hawthorns and blackthorns and some tropical thorns that we've got in the glass houses. There's always a scope for getting the odd thorn in your fingers, and when you're trying to fret steel strings, it's not very pleasant.
Okay, skills that you wouldn't normally associate with your field of work. What do you use, like you were saying about Latin would have been useful, but what do you use at work that people wouldn't expect a gardener to use, like maths, English?
Oh yeah, we use all of that all the time, because you're having to work out sort of volumes of mulch.
Right, okay.
To take an example, how much mulch do I need to cover all the borders in the zoo?
Right, how much? What's the answer?
I think we're up to 4 lots of 80 cubic metres this year already, so lots.
So 320 cubic metres, there we go.
Yeah,
that's quite a lot, isn't it?
Yeah,
maths.
Right, okay, so maths in terms of just calculating volumes, and I guess when you're propagating things as well, you need to know that. Like Jay?
Likewise, but you know, English.
Yeah.
Common sense is, you know, very, you know, we were working with dangerous equipment, we're working around dangerous animals, we're working with members of the public, so just being an all-round
Actually remember to read the instructions and understand them.
Well, most of the blokes on our team, if we get a new bit of kit in the workshop, we tend to do the typical bloke thing, which is try and work out how to use it without reading the instructions.
Right,
okay.
So I'm quietly going to
But quite often it doesn't work and we have to revert back to the book.
I think it's quite interesting because when you're at school and the teacher's saying, well, you're going to need this, and of course a lot of people don't believe them. And when the keeper said they needed to use Excel, and that comes up, and then
computer skills. Nowadays definitely. I mean, record keeping, obviously being a botanic garden is crucial that we keep really good records.
Yeah.
And of course that's all digital now, so computer skills are valuable. But I think
that's true. You were saying about plant disease just now as well, right? So there must be quite a lot of paperwork if we're bringing in something different. Or
we have to have material transfers. So if we send plants off to another collection, then
when you're posting your little
so records, but also a lot of botanical science. So how plants grow and work, and if you just stick a plant in the ground and don't think about what it needs, in terms of water and light and temperature.
When you stick
then
stick with leaves on it in the ground and something gets to water it.
You're not going to live that down.
Nope.
There's lots of knowledge in terms of that plant care, which comes back to science.
Yeah.
But then also going back to the Latin names and understanding all of that side of things in terms of keeping the records. So.
Okay. I think working for a conservation charity often means that we earn less than we could in other fields. Like for a lot of us, it's because we're working towards trying to help with conservation or trying to create somewhere where people can connect with nature or learn about the wild world. But are there other sacrifices? I mean, the weekend work and things like that. The keepers, when we asked them about sacrifices for their job, they said, well, they've actually been away from family. A lot of keepers will move to take a job somewhere else. But with gardeners, is that the case, or is it?
It can be, yeah. I've moved around the country
right.
to follow my career, and overseas. I did 6 months internship out in Israel.
Okay, that sounds really hard. I feel that sacrifice was, brutal. So actually, an opportunity, right? Which is you can travel internationally with it. It's quite exciting, though. Yeah.
So there's lots of opportunities if somebody wants to get into a horticultural career. To work in gardens across the world, or English gardeners, British gardeners are known for being able to work to an incredibly high standard, and horticulture has been such a part of our culture for so long.
Yeah. So being thick, I would have thought that being a gardener, you were training to do a job and you'd be working in this country, but actually you could be moving around. Yeah. So if I said to you, we're working for a conservation charity, and how does that work? How are you helping to save rare or endangered species? So one of the examples would be the white bean, where you're getting seeds or collecting seeds from native trees and then propagating them, and then they're replanted. So you're basically taking seeds and giving them a helping hand to produce young, healthy trees.
Yeah. So while all this building work's going on, there's nowhere for them to go. But afterwards, hopefully these trees will go on to keep those species of Saurus going in the wild.
Right, okay, so it's actually sort of habitat repair in the wild that we can help with.
Yeah.
I suppose if I said to you, when I asked you the question, what's the rarest species you work with, I was almost expecting it to be some tropical oddity, like a strange thing, like the Titanarum that we're dealing with, but actually it's like a native tree that needs a helping hand to survive in the wild.
So many of British species are potentially under threat, and over the years we've worked with a number of different species, whether it be a tiny and not very exciting looking grass called bromus, which actually was extinct in the wild.
Okay, right.
And we grew seeds on and then plants so we could produce more seeds, so those seeds could go into the Millennium Seed Bank.
Right.
Amazing.
And that project came to an end because the seeds were stored for perpetuity. Bromus is a species which has suffered through changes in practices in agriculture. So in the old days, when the wheat was harvested by hand, in that process, seeds of the bromus would be collected, and then when they sowed the next year, some of the bromus seed would go back in. Whereas now it's all mechanical.
Yeah.
The bromus have kind of lost out to.
So again, it's sort of giving a native species a helping hand.
And we've done other species like strapwilt, and working with the people down at Slapton Ley to ensure that population stays stable. So.
Okay. Jay, have you got a particular sort of plant you like working with? Or?
I think trees and shrubs, as Catherine said earlier, planting something that's going to outlive you. It's planted correctly, of course. You know, I think there's always a wonder in that. You know, something that's going to be majestic and big, whether it be an oak or something that's not even a non-native. You know, I think that's the wow factor.
And we're working with some quite unusual species there, like wallaby pines and monkey puzzles and things, right? So quite different ones. Okay. What's technically tricky about your job?
Technically, I think we all have our strengths and weaknesses on the team, and I think as a team we cover all bases really well.
Right.
As I said earlier, some people prefer mowing and some people don't. But I think one of my weaker points is I'm not fantastic with sort of engines and mechanics. You know, I can strip down a chainsaw and sharpen a chainsaw, but you know, if you give me an engine, I'm not very good at tinkering with engines. So
I'm no good at starting a strimmer. I'm just they befuddle me. I don't know what it is. But
I'm okay with that. Yeah. But when it gets a bit more technical, then I think that's my weak point.
Okay.
Yeah.
Catherine, what's technically tricky about your job? What confuses you? Or
it doesn't befuddle me, but I suppose it's a unique one to working in a zoo. Is the complex nature of having to plan the work because. In a normal garden, say working for the National Trust, you can do a job pretty much any time. The only considerations are if the public are in or...
Is this a good time to mention the mandrills? Because I did hear that they ruined your planting, was that correct?
Yeah, so... Yeah, they entered into doing a bit of gardening themselves, I think is the polite way.
So very recently we...
weeding.
Very recently we replaced the fencing on our mandrill enclosure, and now the planting work that the gardeners have done has been undone by the mandrills.
Yeah. Although they have started to leave a few things alone, the things that survived.
Okay.
So, but it's very much natural selection.
That's the challenge of working in an environment like this, is, as Catherine stated, that there is all these challenges is what will the animals make of particular plants. You know, plants need to be established to give them a fighting chance.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, we only had a small window to try and get some plants into that enclosure, knowing full well that some of them would be sacrificial plants, the nature of a mandrill. I think I'm quite lucky that I can wear both hats because I understand the animal side of it as well as what the plants need. So I did sort of see it coming, but you don't give up. You still try to win a battle, if you like. And the mandrills just laughed at us really. And I think every plant, pretty much all by one maybe, was pulled out of the ground within a day.
Keepers have been good and replanted where they can. So, but we have to be almost counterintuitive. Somebody might think, well, you're planting up an animal enclosure. You're going to plant lots of things the animals like. That's a big no-no.
Okay, you want to plant things they don't like.
Yeah, you want a plant selection where if they eat it, they go, oh, yuck, that's horrible, because they won't eat it again. If you can get away with planting spiky plants, and we tried that in the mandrills with planting berberis, then hopefully they'll grab it once, then go, oh, don't like spiky plants, and leave it alone.
Yeah.
So you've really got to think on your head that actually you're not trying to please the animals too much, because if they really like the plant, then chances are that plant is going to live less than a day.
I think some good parenting advice there as well.
So if the plant isn't going to survive because it's constantly being eaten, you're going to end up with a fat animal and an enclosure that doesn't look nice if it's all plants that they like, isn't it?
Okay, we're nearly finished. So one question is, if you weren't working in conservation, what would you be?
That's really difficult.
What would you be? Boxer?
Following the path, we're not a boxer, not at my age anymore. No, I think I'd like to think I'll be working in the music industry somewhere. But right,
okay, so that'll be dream alternative career. And Catherine?
I I guess the only other career that I briefly considered was, for a while, one of my main hobbies was sailing.
Okay.
And I used to volunteer a lot with the Tall Ships Youth Trust.
Right, okay, so sailing skipper.
So, yeah, a pirate probably.
Okay, right, fair enough. Okay, Ollie?
Oh, I wasn't expecting that question.
No,
What would I do if I wasn't here?
Dancer. I'm thinking
Definitely not with my form.
I think actually make quite a good
Not be
pirate
very
song.
I've got an image of
graceful
all
at
busting
all.
moves now.
Yeah, no, it's not good. Not good. I would probably do something with my hands, something like mechanic or something where, like you were saying earlier, and like we've been saying, something where you can actually see the progress that you've made, or something where you can create something or fix something and tinkering. Because I very much do that as a hobby, and I get to do that with all the cameras that I use.
Yeah.
But
Okay.
if I could make a career out of that, then that would be the other thing I would
I think
do.
sometimes it's finding what you're good at and what you enjoy doing, and then trying to find if you can do that actually as a career, which is quite an amazing idea.
So on that thread, Ollie was saying he loves trimming his dad's garden.
Yeah,
Maybe Ollie should be a
I
gardener.
think he needs to.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe we can turn him.
What would your advice for your 15-year-old self be? If you could go back now, just quite a word about careers in your 15-year-old self.
I don't think you should never really have regrets in your life. I think I'm really fortunate with my career. I've worked hard at my career to get out of it what I can. So I'm quite proud of that. I don't think I'd have made too many changes. I think I'd have come into it with a bit more effort from the school-based side of things.
Okay.
Just to give me more of a head start with a knowledge or two.
Yeah.
But you know,
Okay,
I
that's
think,
not a
I
bad
think you get what
situation.
you work for in life. You know, maybe that's just one of my old-fashioned beliefs. But
Yeah.
I think the passion and yeah, just a willingness to try and realise your dream
Yeah.
is my advice.
Catherine?
I'd say take up every opportunity that you can and look for opportunities.
Right.
So often people say, "Oh, I didn't get the chance to do that," but you actually have to sometimes hunt down the opportunity to go and work out in Israel.
Okay, so
So
experiences,
I
chances.
saw a tiny notice on the
Yeah.
college notice board that set off, and I was the only person in my year that pursued that.
Okay. So basically just take the opportunities that come up.
Yeah,
And
so
that's
even
easy.
if it's a small little thread, follow
Yeah.
it, because
Okay.
yeah, you
Fair
never know
enough.
where that's going to lead.
Yeah.
It's on a similar note. Mine was reptiles. I used to keep snakes when I was a child, so it wasn't so much being a zookeeper. It was I want to work with snakes predominantly, but reptiles. And obviously, the zoo is any zoo would have been the perfect platform to get those skills. So. As it turns out, I was a mammal keeper for 26 years. And I did work with reptiles a little bit, but I specialised more with dangerous big cats and rhinos and that sort of stuff. So it wasn't really what I set out to do. I sort of stumbled along and found my niche.
You got distracted.
Got distracted, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much for your time today.
You're welcome.
And thank you for listening to our Wild Planet Trust Careers podcast.
Thank you so much for listening or watching our podcast. If you enjoyed it, please consider leaving us a review, or if you're watching, please hit the like button and leave us a comment about your favourite part of the episode. To get more content from Wild Planet Trust, please consider checking out our YouTube channel. You can subscribe there, and you can also subscribe to our newsletter on our website. Of course, you can find Wild Planet Trust, Paignton Zoo and Newquay Zoo on all main social media platforms, and we'd really appreciate you checking those out as well. All that's left to say is thank you very much for watching, and of course we'll see you in the next episode.